Okay. Brandon, we've learned a lot about neuro drills, and they can be applied for so many different reasons: flow states, pain, kind of like mental states and reasonings, which I'm sure have to do with the flow cycle that some people just are experiencing disruption. And then like optimum performance and neuro drills for improving strength and everything. So how do you go about taking all of these different components and applying it to your life? Like how do you plan your week? How do you plan your day? Are you even trying to use your neuro knowledge in all of these different areas, or do you feel like you're layering on and figuring it out as you go? Like help me figure out that.
Okay, that's a great question because it can be a little overwhelming when you try to think about all the different areas that you can apply neuro to. And so I'll try to answer it from like two different perspectives. One is the perspective of my clients and people that I work with, and one is my own. And they're not much different, but my thought process is a little bit different. Because when I approach it with somebody like a client, excuse me, when I approach it from somebody like a client and they ask me, and we do neuro training, I am wholly focused on their one goal that they have at this moment. If their highest priority is strength building or fitness, um, or pain relief, whatever that may be, performance enhancement. I have one client who really wants to just move better and be stronger. I have another client who wants to get out of pain. I have another one who really is more interested in peak performance and flow states for her cognitive tasks like writing. So three different scenarios and goals. And so I will tailor their neuro drills for those situations. But here is the kicker. As you know, the neuro drills can be used for anything, and the neuro drills don't change. The only thing that really changes is the context in which I explain them to them and in which they do them. For example, somebody, a pain relief client, I explain to them, these drills are going to help you with your pain as you do them more often and you lower your overall threat level. You get better range of motion. Your brain kind of takes the foot off the brake. That's going to all help to relieve this pain. Also, we're moving better because we're doing this joint mobility right here. You're breathing better, which is lowering your threat, right? Your vision is connected to your posture. So you're sitting better at your desk, right? Your vestibular system is helping you with your posture and with your balance, which is going to help you not be under so much tension, which is also going to help you with your pain. So everything I talk about in the context of pain. So let's use this as an example. It's shoulder pain. They're doing some shoulder, some hip mobility on the opposite side, some vestibular work, and some vision drills with some breathing. They've got those like 5 drills. So I talk about them in the context of their pain. Now let's take those same 5 drills for the person who wants to build strength. Those 5 drills, you have better mapping of your shoulder joint. This is going to be better muscle activation of all of the muscles that surround that joint. Better muscle activation means more force production, more strength. Your breathing, when we synchronize that to your movement, you're going to get more strength out of that. You're going to be able to recruit more muscles, create more force through your core, and stabilize your trunk better. Your vestibular system. as you train that and get good activation there, and your brain feels more safe and solid in your environment, again, you're going to have more stability. Your vestibular system is also connected to the whole backside of your body. So all of the muscles of your posterior chain are going to be more active when you activate your vestibular system. And your visual system, same thing. You can use eye reflexes along with your visual drills to add more strength to your lifts. Right, so same 5 areas, same 5 drills, just different contexts. The cognitive performance, I'm going to talk more about flow states there because that's our ultimate peak performance, and we want to try to harness that as much as possible, especially in that cognitive work, because it's a little harder to do there. It's a little easier with movement. You can kind of find flow with that, but taking those same 5 drills, again, we've got the posture conversation, we've got lowering threat, we've got the flow triggers of like deep embodiment. The more we get sensory information through our body, the easier it is going to be to drop into a flow state, because you're kind of taking your mind off, you're shutting down some of the frontal lobe, the prefrontal cortex in certain areas, and activating other areas so that you can shut the self-critic down. The sense of self can go away, and you can just divert those resources to the areas of like intuition, creativity, and that kind of stuff. And so we can use the neuro drills in that context as well, both by reducing threat and then activating specific brain areas that are more conducive to what the flow state actually looks like. So when I talk to clients, that's how I explain it. We can use it in all of these different scenarios. The different context will just kind of change how I explain it to them. But it's the same thing. And that's kind of the key, is that the neuro is the foundation of everything, because it's the governing system of the body and brain. The brain is the nervous system, but you know what I mean. So it doesn't matter what we're doing. Neuro is the underlying foundation for everything.
That I get. And I get from a coaching standpoint, deal with the customer right in front of you.
Yeah,
But
perfect.
like you as the customer, not necessarily that you don't, go to somebody else, because we know at times you can't do all the neuro stuff without someone else,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
But outside of that, day in and day out, do you have a prep routine for your strength training that you're really good at using? Do you
Yeah.
have a time of day where you have your flow drills that you're doing?
Yeah.
And
And
then
yeah, was there one more question there? Go ahead.
just kind of like, how do you break it down in between, like, okay, you wake up in the morning, you activate neuro with a warm-up routine in the morning, and then you go to the gym, so you do neuro in between the workouts in the gym, depending on which exercise, depends on the drill that you would do.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically it. Then you're starting to, as you get more advanced, you start to tailor the drills for the specific context. So, yeah, like in the morning, it's a really good idea to just try to get everything activated and get as much blood flow and activation to the brain as you can. Like, wake your ass up. So the first thing I do is I wake up, I just like roll out of bed, put some shoes on, grab the dogs, go for a walk. So I'm getting up like when the sun comes up, so I'm getting sunlight in my eyes. And I'm not even worrying about neuro at that moment, because I'm just getting up and I'm going walking. I'm not doing any drills until I get home. Should I switch those up? Maybe. Probably. I probably should.
I wasn't judging your routine. I was curious how you're thinking through it. Like,
I probably should do ankle tilts and toe pulls, ball of foot circles. I should do foot and ankle mobility because I need it, and I walk like a 80-year-old man when I first get up because I'm stiff and because my mapping of my feet and ankles has been so bad for so long. It's something I'm still working hard on. But I just know myself at this point, and I've tried and failed too many times to do that. And so it's better for me to not think and to just get up and go. Right. So I gotta lower the barrier to entry a little bit. So I go walk, and then when I get back, then I'll do some drills. So now I'm like a little bit more awake. I've got the sunlight in my eyes. That's my number one thing in that first part of the morning is getting the sunlight in my eyes as quickly as possible. Because we know circadian rhythms and everything else, it's really helpful, really important. So that's my number one goal right then. Then when I get home, I'll do some drills that are more focused, like doing a little bit of movement. I might do an actual, sometimes I'll do movement drills like ankle tilts and very specific joint mobility. Sometimes I'll just go through this 3D maps sequence that I do. Have you ever heard of that? That sound familiar? So it was developed by a physical therapist named Gary Gray on the Gray Institute of Functional Movement. They've got a
I
whole
was like, he's functional movement. I know who he is. Yeah.
yeah. So I took a bunch of his courses. Really, really good stuff.
Yeah,
As
smart
far as
dude.
the movement in the movement world, and they developed this system of movement called 3D maps, which stands for three-dimensional movement assessment and performance system, MAPS.
Okay, makes sense. I
And
remember
it's
now.
these 6 movement patterns that essentially take your joints through all of the ways that they're available to move. It's not as precise as our joint mobility because that's as precise as you can get. And that's the best version. But instead of going through every single joint, toe to top of head, right? This is just a quick, like 3-minute movement sequence that's going to get you moving in all the ways that you can move. It's more of a global gross motor like movement thing that I really enjoy. And it's easy and it's quick and it's great. So sometimes I'll just do that. Sometimes I'll do some joint mobility. But the whole point is get my body moving in as many ways as it can. Like, and neurologically, it's just proprioception. Get some proprioception, get some breathing in there with a couple breathing drills, get some vestibular work. That's the other thing about the 3D maps is that your head is moving in all the ways. It actually matches perfectly with our balance progression because the movements get your head going in every direction and even rotations. So, and then visual. Um, like I'll try to do just a quick couple vision drills, pencil push-up, maybe some eye circles. I'm not even really paying super close attention to the ones that are on my high payoff list sometimes. Oftentimes I will do 1 or 2 that I know are just always high payoff for me. But sometimes I'm just like, I just want my eyes moving in all the ways they can move. Right. So that's kind of like, morning warm-up. And it's not always exactly like that. Sometimes it changes, but it's basically like, can I just get some neuro in that's going to help wake me up and get some blood flow and activation to my brain? Then I usually work out in the morning. And so sometimes that warm up is actually in the gym. Like I'll get my stuff, I'll just go to the gym. But it's the same kind of warm up. It's a movement, breathing, vestibular, visual warm up before I do my exercises. But when it's in the gym and I have a workout, it's a little bit more specific to the workout. Right? If I'm training, lately I've been doing a lot of like speed and power, um, kind of mixing everything, strength, hypertrophy, speed, and power. all into one program. So depending on the day, if I'm doing like agility work and maybe some like what I do yesterday. I did agility work and I did back workout. So my movement drills were focused around the joints of my legs and lower body to get prepped for the agility work. And so I'm doing like sports speed joint mobility really fast. And I'm doing a lot of bouncing and like shifting to get the vestibular system working really well. And then I'm doing some like slower joint mobility of my upper body, more focused on like muscle mapping almost and feeling and getting good activation because I'm trying to like build my back and then I'm trying to do agility work that needs speed and quickness. So can you see the difference of how I'm like using the neuro to prep for the activity? Like my joint mobility, upper body, lower body is different because of the activity that I'm about to do. Slower and more controlled, focused on feeling the muscles and getting good activation of the upper body. And then quick, fast, big reaction times for the lower body because I'm going to get moving really fast. And then I always have, it's not always the same, but I actually have been using the Mike Ox towel, you know what I'm talking about, as my vision training and vestibular work in between my sets. For me, one of my biggest issues is frontal lobe issues. Like my frontal lobe doesn't activate when I get tired. It's the first thing to shut down, and not in a good way, like in flow. Like the whole thing becomes deactivated a little bit because it's going into kind of survival mode when I get tired. And so for me, it's visual fatigue, and then kind of that survival brain takes over, and I start to get a little bit of pain, and the fatigue really goes up. So for me, in my recovery, like between sets and stuff, I'm really trying to activate my frontal lobe. So things like arrow chart, coordination chart, vision drills like saccades, near far, that kind of stuff that's really big time activation for the frontal lobe is really helpful for me. It brings down my fatigue a ton, helps me recover really fast, and I just feel way better going into the next set. So I do that, and I usually do breathing drills, especially when I'm doing like agility stuff or speed things, anything that's got a cardio component. I'm doing like burst breathing, usually burst breathing or forced exhales, stuff to kind of override the breathing mechanism to reset that too, to slow that down. So everything is really specific to the context of what I'm doing in the workout. And then there's two other places that are ripe for neuro drills. So work, like sitting at a computer, when I'm working in person with clients, it's really easy to get neuro drills in because I'm walking around, I'm standing, I'm working with them, so I'm showing them how to do neuro drills. So you can sneak them in. It's kind of nice. But when I'm sitting at a computer working on like, funnels or building communities or, doing writing and doing that stuff, I'm much more intentional about like the flow cycle and kind of riding those biorhythms and sneaking in drills kind of based on that. And then also for like recovery in between, just like for my workouts. So general rule is like every about 45 minutes, I need to take 2 minutes up to 5 minutes to just stop and like go outside and look in the distance to give my eyes a rest maybe even do some resets, put some colored glasses on, and just let my eyes chill out. And then I might do a little bit of movement. Maybe I do the 3D maps again. Maybe I just do some joint mobility. Maybe I do some bouncing with some burst breathing. That's one I really like to do together because it's so fast and it's really activating. And then I'll do a little vision work, depending on how tired my eyes are. And then I'm back at it. Right. So it's a really quick break, and I'll try to do a few of those. So by the end of it, like I've done a lot of neurotraining.
Mhm.
You know, if I really stick to that, which I don't, not every day, but I try to.
So basically, the only routine you didn't hit in there between, getting up and getting active in the morning and a morning routine is having like an evening routine of drills for
Yeah,
stronger to go to bed or something.
that's what I was getting to. That's the last one.
Okay.
And this is the one I'm the worst at, just because I'm like tired in the evening and I skip it a lot. But when I do it, it's great. I know it's helpful. But
It's funny how there's that reward and the reward is there, but it's still flexing the muscle to do hard things.
yeah, and my biggest problem is that I do too much and I set too high of expectations. So this is my self-sabotage. My biggest pattern is like if I'm not going to do the whole thing, why do it at all? Right? Which is just silly. Like because one neuro drill is better than none. You know, one little activation is going to help you, but like rather than doing nothing. So that's a mindset thing that I'm still working on, but um the whole thing, that I really like to do is like some lymphatic work, and some sensory work, you know, not necessarily joint mobility, but more just like sensory input, that I kind of do with the lymphatic. I don't do brushing, but it's just kind of like the big six
Hmm.
on the lymph nodes. And then it's the thought process is activate the bottom part of the brain, go up to the front, just again to get good blood flow and activation to the whole brain for your lymphatic system to work better when you sleep and clear out all the waste products and help your brain just do all the work it needs to do as you sleep. So starts with like the sensory input, and then a little bit of breathing. Straw breathing is great. Um, that I sometimes will try to do like as we're watching a show before I even like get ready for bed. Um, Other things that I sometimes will do are just like breathing device, resisted breathing, um, for like 30 breaths if I haven't done that today. Um, or even just bag breathing, like just getting a shot of oxygen, to the brain, with the bag breathing. And again, lower barrier to entry. Like the resistance trainer, that's kind of like hard work, but the bag breathing is so easy. But try to do some sensory, some breathing, and then some vestibular and visual. And so vestibular, just doing some bouncing, maybe some shifting, and maybe a balance progression. Usually I'm just doing one. So lymphatics, bag breathing, bouncing, and then I'll just do a visual drill that's also a frontal lobe activation to get everything working, like a coordination chart or maybe like a convergence chart. Um,
Working all of your systems, basically.
yeah, to get everything activated from back to front. Because we know the visual system, right? is back here for your occipital lobe. But also those visual drills are big time frontal lobe activators. So once I have the activation from down here, with the breathing and the movement and the sensory, we got all of this back here, then go to the visual and connect them. That's the idea. And yeah, that's basically it. Like, shouldn't take too long. The thing that takes the longest, honestly, is the lymphatic stuff, but really
Um,
good sensory input that most people don't realize that they're doing is like taking a shower at night. Like you take a shower at night, you're getting sensory input to your whole body, and you add the heat. Maybe you finish with some cold if it's not too
that.
late. But yeah, um, or like we used to have a jacuzzi when I lived in Montana, a hot tub, and that was the best thing ever. Like go out and do a soak, like in the cold weather. Man, you sleep so good.
Yeah, I like the bath at night, more the cold shower in the morning.
Yeah, me too.
um, I don't have the movement, like even necessarily doing the lunges down to the way that I would like to, or at least, in terms of you acknowledging that we can be really hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
uh, but in my morning walk, getting the sunlight, I have gotten pretty good at switching it up in terms of throw some, look right for a while you walk, look left for a while you walk backwards for a little bit.
Yeah,
Um,
that's great.
Long exhales during the walk. Um, and then I'm good about the lymphatic, the big six, more so than I am about, or kind of just even like the nerve stretchings and
Nice.
getting everything going. And that one's really easy for me because I do just like to do it a lot when we're sitting at the computer.
Mm,
um, and then yeah, the vision one with the computer I also noticed is huge. Like it's nice when I can sit outside and then I can just look over the computer and everything's just far distance, color changes.
yeah.
But in coaching sessions, that's an easy way for me to be like, look, I can show you how bad my system is. I've been looking at my desktop, uh,
Hmm.
breathing blue light on me and EMFs. And so look, oh yeah, it sucks. Now I can do a quick drill and oh look, it got better. It's like, well, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed for me, the visual fatigue is the number one threat in my life. Like, I used to sit down at the computer and like immediately when I sat down, I would like want to fall asleep.
Ooh.
It was crazy. And for the longest time, I'm like, oh, my metabolics are so screwed up. And while they're not perfect, more of the problem is my visual system. It's like immediately when my eyes start to feel threat, my brain just shuts my body down. It's just like you need to go lay down, you need to go close your eyes, you need to like hold on to every calorie you've got because we're gonna die. So it's pretty interesting how powerful it is and how often it just gets overlooked, really.
Picked up one of these that I've been playing with.
There, ice. Is that for your neck or anywhere? Ooh, ooh.
Got the nose spot right here. But you made like seeing you do the cold stuff all the time or whatever. I don't know. Instagram put it up in front of me.
Well, now it's gonna pop up in front of me, and I'm probably gonna buy it because that thing looks awesome.
it's 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 really nice.
Yeah.
So that's been one of my evening hacks too.
That would be a really good, short 2-minute break hack too. Like go put that on and just do some like joint mobility or breathing while you have that on,
Yeah.
and then get back to your computer. Like that'd be a really that's what I'm gonna try it with.
Well, I'll add it into my walk away from computer routine.
Yeah, love that. That's one thing I used to do to help go to sleep because like one of the biggest things for people with insomnia is their brains literally do not cool down. Like physically, their brains stay hotter. They've actually measured this, right? So one solution that I actually found worked for me was to put an ice pack on my head about 20 minutes before I'm trying to go to bed, go to sleep. So I just have like a gel ice pack with a cloth covering on it, or use a towel or something, and I would just put it like right on my forehead just to cool my brain down. And it was really helpful. You can do that or right below the occiput, base of the or the top of the neck there.
Yeah, you're gonna love this thing. It hits the back so nice as it's hitting the front.
Yeah, can't believe I didn't invent that.
I forgot I'm here at my buddy's place in Mesa, and I came back, and I was like, I've got these pads in there, and he goes, well, there's these freezer packs, but he's like, Joe, these are freezer packs, and I was like, no, those are the head packs that I got for
Hmm.
neuro drills, and he starts laughing at me. He's like, well, they've been working out great in my cooler.
Perfect.
The Salt River days.
Yeah, fun days.
Yeah. Well, in terms of me kind of feeling like I have a lot of knowledge and how I should be applying it and in this little neuro lab scenario of playing with life and figuring ourselves out, I appreciate you sharing all that.
Yeah, of course. It's an ever evolving thing, but
Well,
uh,
that's the funny part, right? When all of a sudden you're like, this was a go-to drill. Why is it not working? Like when the tongue activation suddenly gives you really negative response and you're like, what happened? That gave me such a great response before.
hmm. Yeah, I don't think I've had anything like that that was
Oh,
really
really?
positive and then switched to negative.
Yeah, my tongue
That,
my tongue activation drills have changed probably like 3 times. And now, in order to get a positive response with tongue activation, I've got to add like bite to it. Otherwise, like every tongue drill gives me a negative activation right now.
biting on your tongue.
Not biting on my tongue. Just well, the one that's best for me is like the middle of the tongue on the top of the mouth, but not the tip of the tongue.
Okay.
And so I can bite on both sides because I have a bilateral bite right now, where it used to be bite on the right.
Yeah. So knowing about your history and working with you multiple times, in informal settings, I know that you don't have a clear PMRF issue on either side, right? For you, most everything comes down to the midline,
Yeah, midline cerebellum.
midline cerebellum, and then there's not really a midline brainstem, but it switches back and forth, which kind of, and when we say midline, we mainly mean like fuel and activation, like starting in the midline and then branching out. So you don't really have a deficit on either side, but it shows up on either side based on the scenario. So it's going to switch a lot. So, like the drills you're describing are both bilateral drills, they're midline drills, right? Midline tongue. bilateral bite,
Hmm.
you're hitting both sides.
Hmm.
So,
So
you
I'm
know,
like peeling layers of the onion at working my midline pattern kind of.
yeah, yeah, and it's, you know, it doesn't happen to me because I don't have a bilateral problem like that. Mine is clearly on my right side for PMRF.
Hmm.
A little bit of a midline cerebellum problem, but that's only when fuel is the issue. When I have proper fuel, it's left side all the way. Make sense?
Hmm.
So, you know, the inhibition ladder, the neuro ladder, right? Inhibition and nervous system regulation first, then fuel, then sensory activation, proprioception, all that good stuff. Then it's integration, frontal lobe at the top. So you got to make sure that you take care of nervous system regulation and inhibition first if you need to lower threat, which I know really isn't a deal for you, right? You don't really do a lot of the inhibition stuff, right?
No, the inhibition stuff. Well, I go in spurts of when I use a lot of inhibition tools, but if I stack inhibition with activation, my body eats it up.
Okay, cool. So knowing that, like maybe you throw on your green glasses. I just know that those have worked for you in the past,
Hmm.
which are very inhibiting for like everything. But then you start layering the activation on top of it. But you got to know when you're using inhibition tools and activation tools at the same time, it's going to require a lot of fuel. Nice.
When
So
you're
if
using inhibition and activation at the same time, it requires a lot of fuel.
inhibition itself requires fuel because you got to process, you know, less.
This is just also explaining like why I can be a complete sugar junkie.
Yeah. So you're probably just burning through a lot of sugar. You have high metabolic needs. And that's not a bad thing. Like you got a good functioning furnace. That's cool. But you may run out of fuel, and when that happens, then basically nothing's gonna work. Or it's gonna be flipping all over the place, or the stuff that usually works giving you a bad result. You know, those are generally gonna be fuel issues first.
Okay.
Um, so right. Inhibition, then fuel. Make sure you have enough fuel, and then go at your bilateral and midline activation. And if midline activation is not working for you specifically, this is not for everybody, but for you, um, then you could be pretty certain that you got some kind of fuel problem going on, or there's a major threat somewhere that needs to be dealt with, which inhibition might deal with that depending on what it is, but um, yeah. Does that make sense? Like following that ladder up and focusing on the fuel for you, I think is probably your main issue when it comes to that flipping side to side and like old drills not working. The other reason old drills don't work is just because your brain's adapted to it. And that's a good thing, right?
Right, right, right. I mean, that was how I was always looked at it.
With cranial nerves though, like that's super common and that's like the basic principle of neurotraining and neuroplasticity. When we're talking about most all of the systems, vestibular, visual, I mean, movement, you know, everything, strength, all of that. With cranial nerves, it's the same thing, but it's a little trickier. Um, and what's the best way to explain it? I mean, because you're using them all the time. Like you're almost like never not using them. If you're talking, you're using your tongue. The hypoglossal nerve is activating. So by sticking it in one side all the time, you are going to eventually drive up the activation, and with enough repetition and intensity, yes, it will start to stay there. And so it will start to lose its effectiveness. But for it to change as quickly as it had, as you're talking about, I wouldn't assume that that's neuroplastic change. That's like gonna stick. I would
No,
assume that's more of a threat or a fuel issue.
well, actually, I mean, for me, I was using a laser, and then that's when the change from the tongue on the right to the tongue in the middle, and my bite changed from being on the right to the being bilateral was after a laser session, and it's never switched back since that laser session.
Where was the laser focused?
PMRF bilateral.
Bilateral PMRF. Okay, cool. Great.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's great. The laser's gonna drive activation, blood flow. Like, doesn't the laser also helps mitochondrial function too?
Mm-hmm.
So you're getting more energy, more efficient. Great. Since fuel is your main issue, helping your mitochondria function better is fantastic.
I just I've been kind of hard on myself lately because of the amount of sugar that I've been consuming. But I went back to doing smoothies in the morning with, different fruit. And my metabolism, I was thinking about it being a metabolism thing,
I
but
mean,
now,
it is, but also it's
well,
not that simple.
I was like, my neuro drills and stuff throughout the day have just, the repetition of it increased so much too, that as you're saying all this stuff, I'm like, well, that explains why I'm seeking fuel more than what I feel like I should be. But then that also means kind of reaching a greater level of safety in my history too, probably, right?
Yeah, I mean, um, are you getting fat?
No,
No.
I'm seeing more abs.
Perfect. So you're probably gaining muscle
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you're feeding your tissues,
yeah.
nervous system, skeletal muscle, like you're probably getting denser bones too. You're becoming more robust. I mean, your metabolism is just like, we might say it's not like super efficient, but just because you're burning through so much, but also, you're doing a lot. So, yeah, I mean, if you're not like packing on excess body fat and stuff, yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. I'd keep eating.
Actually, the last time I got on a scale, I was 8 pounds heavier than I would have guessed, especially given how good I feel in my digestive system compared to normally once I start to kind of put on some of the weight where I see myself on the scale at that higher level. Like I feel like, ugh. So the
Yeah,
fact that I got on and I was at that weight and I felt great, I was like, oh, this is awesome.
awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's ideal. Most most people in in America for sure, but in the world would love to have that metabolism where you just the hard thing for you is getting enough fuel, right? You got to keep eating, you
The,
know?
the hardest thing for me was being able to digest protein, which
Oh yeah,
now after years of work,
that's gonna make things tough. Yeah.
I mean, that was, so I'm just going through this transition of being able to break down enough protein and switching away from the sugar, but then there's still times where it's like I get all this sugar.
I mean, that's your main energy source, so
So whatever. Right?
yeah, as long as you're getting adequate protein so you can continue to build and you're getting then you can, get as much fuel as you need. Um, the nice thing about your neuro situation is that it's going to be pretty clear when you need more fuel. A lot of people, it shows up in more subtle ways. Um, but yours is very clear. It's pretty cut and dry. Like when you try to do something and it just doesn't work, that's for you generally a fuel issue. Where, I'm not saying you don't have a lot of threats going on because you do. We all do, but a lot of people that shows up um, in more subtle ways that are, you know, well, I'll say it a different way. Your metabolism works like really well to the point where it's clear when you have a fuel need. Like your nervous system and your body are very clear when they are telling you that.
Yeah, I definitely know when I need food.
Where other people, like people that suffer from like pretty intense insulin resistance or like diabetes, it's not clear. And their metabolism is so jacked up that sometimes it seems like they need fuel when really they don't. And sometimes they're like playing with this, like they're always in a fuel crisis, right? Which is contributing to their threat. But then when they give themselves a little bit of fuel, their metabolism doesn't metabolize it very well. So it's not even that helpful oftentimes. And then they overdo it because they don't know where the line is, right? And it just becomes this like vicious cycle of inefficiency. That sucks. Like that's a hard place to be. It's hard to know what's wrong and how to fix it until you get that metabolic efficiency and flexibility back. So it's a good place to be. That's what I'm saying. Um,
Well, my experience for the people that might watch this and be stuck in that space, activation, huge. You can start to activate your metabolism, which now they have the supplements that show the genes that do that kind of thing. Um, and adaptogens. Adaptogens seem to be like magic in those circumstances for most people. It's finding the right adaptogen for the individual can take some playing with, but it's my metabolism experience on that one.
are you coaching people on metabolisms? Metabolisms? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I don't work with people necessarily like super one-on-one with it because that's just kind of save that for somebody who you really want me to dive into your entire life and work with it on. I just haven't sold that yet. But ultimately, yeah, that's in learning to heal my gut and be able to digest protein, definitely one of my greatest feats to date for sure.
Yeah. Along, I mean, next to neuro, I mean, you can't really separate them, but if you were to silo them, like neuro training and healing your gut, probably the most important things that a person can do for their overall health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's where and that to me is the greatest place where I've realized like the mindset stuff, the gut stuff, and the neuro, because even with the gut stuff, if you're not doing the neuro, then it doesn't necessarily matter what you eat.
Mm.
Or on my journey, once I got to the neuro, I started to realize all the stuff that I had been doing gut wise, where I was throwing I was really testing myself, and then it would be like a springboard back.
Mm.
But I stuck to doing the hard things sides of it where over the course of time it played to my advantage. But at the the first time I flushed my mucus lining in my gut, I had no idea what to expect. But within the time period of feeling really awful, where the mucosal lining was coming out both ends, to trying to consume and get foods to go down, that took about 6 hours. But once I was able to drink water and tea and start to consume foods again, I couldn't stop eating a block of cheese. And I'm eating the block of cheese being like, I know I just went through all of this to not do this, but I'm like, more cheese, more cheese, more cheese, more cheese.
Well,
But
you're also from Wisconsin, so
right, well, it was in the fridge. That was the thing I learned. Like, you do something again, don't keep it in the fridge.
yeah, good point. Yeah.
uh,
Uh, all right, dude, I gotta run.
Me
But
too. Thank you for today. I appreciate it.
yeah, thanks for showing up. This will be really helpful, I think, for some people in the community. So I appreciate your questions and yeah, see you around the bend.
For sure.
All right. Later, Joe.